Welcome to Tim's Take, and we're continuing our discussion with Dr. Jamie Corder on genetics and livestock, beef in particular, and we ended up talking about EPDs. Mm-hmm. But now we're going to get into what that really, the information that it says and how to interpret that for your objective.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm actually going to give credit to my graduate student, Clint Bailey. He put together this example, but I really like it. So a lot of people get overwhelmed when they look at the numbers, right? They don't really understand what they mean. And, bull cell catalogs are just full of these numbers and pictures, right? And what do we want to go to? We want to look at the picture. And I'll be the first person to tell you that I want my bulls to look nice, right? Because I like looking at my cows. I want their calves to look nice. So I'm not saying the EPDs are the only thing that matter.
And well-behaved.
He's
not knocking down fences.
Yeah. But if we can give some kind of insight, like I was saying, about what the engine is underneath that bull, then we're making more informed decisions, right? And that just leads to ultimate success. So I think they're going to share a slide for you, but basically in my example, I've got two bulls. One of them is from a Gen X catalog from a few years ago. And then one of them is a bull that was just of Sitz Angus in Montana. That was just one that I found in a catalog that was genetically related to this AI bull. And so the first thing that I always tell people is, well, what do you think? One of them became a high selling AI bull, and then the other one was just sold, for $5,500 to an operation to breed 30 cows a year, right? So what makes that, what determines which way the bull goes, especially if these two, share a pedigree? And the answer is genetics, right? The answer is genetic merit. So the EPDs and the genetics that are underlying those animals determine how popular or how well used that they're going to be in the industry. It doesn't mean that the cover bull has less value. We need those. It's just the trustee bull here had higher genetic merit for traits of interest of economic importance to the industry. And so here I've pulled out 3 of their EPDs, or their expected progeny differences, for birth weight, weaning weight, and yearling weight, right? So easy definitions. How many pounds are the calves going to be at birth? How many pounds are they going to be at weaning? How many pounds are they going to be at yearling, right? Mm-hmm. Easy definitions. And so what you see, that number at the top, is the actual prediction. And a lot of people want to look at this and be like, well, what does plus 0.6 mean? Well, the definition for birth weight, right? But the definition is just it's 0.6 pounds above whatever that breed association determines is their.
Because we learned last time you can't compare Angus and Charolais. Correct.
Yep. So it's whatever that number is for that breed. So it really doesn't become very relevant, right? And then the second number after that is the accuracy. So that is how confident the prediction thinks that it is, or the evaluation thinks that it is in that prediction.
So the more numbers we have to back this up.
Correct. The higher that number gets. And so you'll notice, I think, in this example, for weaning weight, the AI sire was young. He had a 0.54 for his accuracy, compared to the Sitz bull, when I pulled it, had probably had some progeny that were reported back, but his accuracy was 0.4. So a little bit lower. He probably had a little bit less information in the evaluation because trustee is an AI sire.
That kind of surprised me that it's that low, the confidence.
Yeah, so that's a good actually question. In the dairy industry, you get to see more that are like at that 0.8, plus 0.8, plus 0.9. In the beef industry, remember I said last time about Beef Improvement Federation? So what we don't want the evaluation to do is to be overconfident in its prediction. So we call that like inflation of the accuracy or bias of the accuracy. And so what
my wife calls that embellishing.
Just in the yes. It's an inadvertent kind of thing that comes out of how we calculate it within the statistics of the model. So what BIF does is it takes the number that the evaluation spits out and then it adjusts it. So these are actually BIF adjusted accuracies that take that number and kind of massage it down so that we're not overconfident. And so actually a plus 0.5 is a very good accuracy for a sire. If this was a yearling bull in a sale catalog that we didn't know a lot on, you would see that around like 0.3. And so you're seeing actually a pretty accurate prediction there. The only time you'll ever see them in that 0.8, 0.9 range is like Keneally Craftsman was kind of a heavily used AI, the most heavily used AI sire in the Angus breed last year. And because he had so many progeny reported in a given time, his accuracy is actually increasing. So you'll see it when you have these really prominent, well-used bulls. And obviously the older that they get, the higher their accuracy goes. But I would be comfortable with something like that.
Okay.
And then the number at the bottom with that percent. So if you don't understand or you're not comfortable looking at EPDs, I always tell people to look at that percent. So what that tells you is where in the Angus breed that animal ranks for that trait.
Like a batting average.
Yeah, like a batting average, right?
It's spring baseball.
In this example, or for percentile rank in the beef industry, the higher the number, so the lesser the number, closer to 1%, the better. So this bull Trusty has a weaning weight EPD of plus 73, but he's in the top 15% of the breed for that trait.
Okay.
So there's, in the however many that are registered with the Angus Association, he's in the top 15%. Okay?
All right.
So he has a good EPD for that. And then you can compare that to Confidant, who has plus 63, so 10 pounds less, but he's only in the top 40% of the breed.
So there's no way this other one, this Confidant, that you want to be part of your main genetics. He's going to be your cleanup.
He's going to be your cleanup bull.
Right.
Yep. And he's still above average.
Right. He's still good. He's still
a great bull. He's just not as doesn't have as high of a genetics as Trusty. So in this example, the actual purchase price of Sid's Confidant was $5,500, right? So let's say you bring him home. His first year, he's going to breed 20 to 25 cows, but then on average, he's going to breed about 30 cows a year, right? That's about what we say for more mature bulls. So to put an apples to apples on this, let's say, and Trusty at the time I looked this up was $25 a semen straw. So for the straw, with all of the drugs and all of that goes into artificially inseminating a cow, we put that at about $1,500 to breed 30 cows to Trusty. Okay, that's how I came up with that number.
Because you got to get her timed right.
Correct. You have to do the cedar, the drugs, and all of that, plus the straw. So we put that $25, I think, last time I talked to repro guys in my office, it was around $21 for all of that. So I added those two together, rounded up, and then $50. Multiplied it by 30. Yep, $50.
Plus somebody has to know what they're doing.
Yes. Yep.
Your vet can do that if you can't.
Yes. Yep, your vet, or, we're always looking for cows to AI for research projects.
Oh,
so
sure.
We can do it.
All right.
So that's kind of the purchase cost of those animals for a single year. And that doesn't include how much it takes to keep that bull around your place, right? For a year.
Which is $400 or $500 probably.
At least.
Yes.
Yeah. Depends on how much he eats. So their weaning weight EPDs, I'm using it as an example. Trustees was plus 73 to Confidants plus 63. And when you're looking at those numbers, it's really hard to kind of wrap your mind around, okay, but what does that mean? But what I want you to do instead when you're looking at those numbers is say it's an expected progeny difference. So what's the difference between those two bulls? Okay. So the difference between those two bulls is 10 pounds, right? 73 minus 63. So they bred 30 cows. We multiply that by 30. We get 300 pounds of difference. If we were to use bull A as compared to bull B, that's 300 pounds of weaning weight difference. And so if we multiply that by current market prices, there's $900 economic difference between breeding to Trusty compared to Sid's Confidant. That's how, when you're going through a sale catalog, you can kind of compare this bull to that bull.
Sure.
Yeah. But we don't want the other pushback that I get from producers when they're trying to understand EPDs. You'll hear me say a lot of times, well, calves born out of this bull compared to this bull will be 10 pounds different on average, or this is what we expect, right? Because it's statistics. We're not perfect. The algorithm will never be perfect because there's millions of different pieces of DNA in the cattle genome, and we will never know the true impact of all of them. That is a mathematical equation that is impossible to solve.
And it's up to the producer too to make sure the mama is in good shape, that she can produce the milk.
Yep.
You got good pastures.
Yep. This is just the genetic merit.
You get the best genetics. You can go through all this, and then you're a poor manager.
Or you have a drought.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It happens.
It happens.
It does.
And so I want to explain kind of why that phrasing is important and why we need to kind of understand that when we're looking at kind of progeny. So I hope that they're able to put this image up for you, but what you can see is, and this is a different example just to make the math easier, but in this instance, that black bull or bull A has a weaning weight of plus 50, and bull B, in this case, that yellow or gold bull, is plus 70. And so there's 20 pounds difference in kind of the EPD for weaning weight for those two bulls. And if you were to look at the average weaning weight of their calves, 495 compared to 515 pounds, on average, that's a 20-pound weight difference. But remember what we said about cattle having 30 pairs of chromosomes, right? When, just to kind of high level explain to you, when we breed a bull with a cow, even if it's the same exact cow, there's over 1 quintillion possible combinations.
That's a lot of zeros.
That's a lot of zeros. I don't even know if I could tell you how many.
I don't know either.
But it's 1 billion different combinations in the semen, and there's 1 billion different combinations in the egg. And so when you bring that together, it's over 1 quintillion possible combinations of DNA. And so what does that come out to? Variation, right? Genetic variation. It's why I have a job, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it exists. Mendel proved it, right? We think about the P experiment, genetic variation exists. And so what that graph on the slide shows is that while the average weaning weight of those bulls is going to probably be really close to 495 and 515, there's going to be a 20-pound difference when we look at their calves on average. There's going to be a distribution, right? There's going to be calves that weigh more or less than that value. They're not all going to weigh 495 pounds. They're
Right.
gonna vary. And so, but we see that in a normal distribution. And so the black line would represent the distribution of weaning weights of calves born to that bull. And then the gold would represent the distribution of weights compared to the other gold bull. And so what you can see is that, yes, there are instances where calves out of bull A or the black bull would weigh more than calves born out of the gold bull. But there's also calves out of the gold bull that weigh more than the black bull. And so when we average all of that together, there's still a 20-pound difference.
And you go through all this to pick the right bull, but if your cows don't have the genetics to help express this, are we shooting yourself in the foot?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say you're shooting yourself in the foot, but I would assume in these examples that you've been kind of doing the same thing in your cows. And so your cow herd, I would assume, are genetically similar, right? And so I would say all of the cows would have a, let's say, 0 EP, not in reality, but like I treat the cows as like a 0 EPD for weaning weight. They're all going to have that same genetic merit. And so the real difference comes in kind of what they inherit when you're making those decisions, what they inherit out of the sire, unless you can DNA test the cows. And then you know this cow has more genetic merit for weaning weight than this one, because what I'm talking about in bulls, we can do in cows as well.
Sure.
So, and that goes back to the replacement heifer selection.
So I know a lot of small producers would just go to a sale barn and buy a bull. And you don't know what you're getting, do you?
Nope.
I mean, it can look good.
Yep.
But it could have a very low, these numbers, a minus 0.2 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like to go back to the car example, it'd be like buying your next ranch pickup online, sight unseen.
But like you said off air, whether you're a large producer or a typical small producer, hobby farmer in Missouri, this is important.
This is important, right? And I would say it's more important when you're a small producer because the decisions that you make have more of an economic impact on your profit, because we know that as you increase the number of cows in a herd, your operation expenses as a ratio, right, they get smaller per head, right? Because you have to own a tractor, you have to, so there's certain fixed costs that then as you increase the number of cows, decrease the actual, cow cost per year. And so when we're talking about increasing weaning weight, if you can increase weaning weight in your herd by 10 pounds, that has a larger economic impact on you on an individual animal basis than it does, for a larger operation. But to go back to this, the last thing that I wanted to point out too is I've talked a lot about weaning weight, but I also talked about how traits are genetically correlated, right? And so we never want to single trait select. So this is just an example using one trait so you can understand how the data work and how the predictions work. But there's a reason that there are so many traits when you open up a cell catalog and you're trying to decide. So that's where, in my mind, selection indexes come into play, because they're basically a way that takes those breeding objectives. Remember that I talked about the more common breeding objectives among the industry, and they take the traits that matter and they add an economic value to those.
Like ribeye size.
Yes, like ribeye size, or, longevity, weaning weight, all of those things, and they put them together into a single economic value. So then there are maternal breeding objectives and terminal. So then there are more maternal and terminal oriented selection indexes. But then there's also some that kind of incorporate both traits into a single index or economic model. And so if you're looking for a bull of a certain breed, then I would very much recommend you just go to that breed association's website and try and find where they define those indexes and what traits go into those indexes, because they all will explain kind of the breeding objectives and the traits that are incorporated. And you can say, yes, that matches what I want, or it doesn't. And then instead of getting overwhelmed and looking at all these traits that are important at once, you're just looking at a single value.
So if I was just going to sell, I'm selling weaned calves. I'm not going to retain ownership to the whole feedlot. Would I need to worry about ribeye size? Am I going to get a premium for that as a weaned calf?
Yeah. So it depends.
Sure. Who I sell them to?
It depends on who you sell them to. I mean, reputation is everything in our industry, right? And there's something to be said for understanding those traits and at least keeping an eye on them when it comes to buying bulls. But if you're selling at weaning and raising your own replacements, then as far as the maternal side, like a $M index from Angus or a $C, which is dollar commercial, would be kind of something I would pay attention to. But what we're starting to see in the industry is, outside of just your local sale barn, I would love for us to start paying attention to this at the local sale barns, but it's starting more at the larger calf kind of selling entities like Superior Livestock and places like that, where we have these programs that will genetically verify feeder cattle. And if we can test the heifers and know their genetic merit and and the steers are out of the same sires, there are programs like Top Dollar Angus, Angus Link, and others. Those are just two that are on top of mind, where if you kind of check all the boxes for the programs, you can put that stamp on it that says that I know the genetic potential of this steer progeny, and the order buyers and the feedlot operators know that there's value in that, because you're reducing the risk for them when they purchase that load lot of cattle. They know with that stamp on it that those cattle are going to grow and grade and make them money. And so because you're doing that, they're willing to pay more for those calves.
So you're going to have to do a little bit of work yourself to get that to really...
I mean, I think some people might, if that's something that they're interested in. But if you've been paying attention to those traits and you've been consistent with that breeding objective, I think people would be surprised how easily it is for you to profit off of the decisions that you've been making. It's just a way to market, a better way to market your cattle.
So even if I wanted to sell direct to the consumer, I could get those terminal traits myself. That's what I want, because I want to have big ribeyes. I want to have this great gain. And
or if you're like my husband and I, and you have a certain set of cattle, but you're trying to decide which ones you want to retain and keep in that program, maybe not all of them are going to be worth it, then the genetic test could tell you which ones are going to marble and have larger ribeyes and be kind of be within what you're looking for, and maybe which ones aren't.
Right.
That would cost you more money.
All right. So we got about 5 minutes. What do we want to, how do we want to?
I mean, I don't know. I think I've talked about a lot. I know that I'm in the weeds, but genetics is a really kind of hard thing to talk about. I think if I were to talk about, if you have any further questions on anything, like in specific that you think would apply to you, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a state extension specialist, so I love talking about cattle. I will talk about cattle and genetics all day, every day. Clearly.
Right.
But I think from a systems standpoint, you know, using genetics within the beef industry is a cycle. So seed stock producers use the technology to breed and create cattle of superior genetics that then, you know, other seed stock producers, but also commercial producers then purchase, right?
Right.
And they purchase them based on which EPDs hopefully match their breeding objectives. We talked about that last episode. That we have to have a breeding objective, and then we select bulls according to that breeding objective. Those bulls then come home or are AI'd, and two cows that maybe we do or don't know their genetic merit. It's better if we do, but we then breed those cattle and have subsequent progeny, right? And so then those progeny, we can take a DNA test on to gauge how we're doing, what DNA of those quintillion different combinations they inherited. And then we can make decisions based on that information. So we can decide which heifers we retain and develop. We can decide which ones are worth more as feeder heifers. We can qualify steers for terminal programs and market them better. And then also based on what we know about the replacement heifers and what they inherited, then we know more about what we're succeeding in when it comes to our breeding objectives, where we need help, and then use that information to inform our bull buying decisions the next year.
What's a genetic test cost, DNA test?
It depends.
I love those answers.
So for the seed stock side, it depends on the breed association. They set their prices themselves. I would say anywhere from $37 to $50 on the seed stock side.
And that's what they get a clip of the ear, don't they?
Little TSU out of the ear.
So your Angus Association or Hereford, they can help you with all that.
They can. And
Great.
then on the commercial side, we do the same thing. So on the commercial side, where the seed stock guys have to report pedigree, report phenotype, and all this stuff, on the commercial side, they have three actual main products in the industry that you can just take a DNA sample and send it in, and it gives you back what we call a molecular breeding value. So it's based only on the DNA of the animal. You don't have to know anything else.
And it will interpret it for you.
It will interpret all of it for you. So it will do the 23andMe part, right? So you send in the DNA sample, and then it sends you the results that you can then interpret. And they're really geared towards replacement heifers because the average cost of those tests is like $28 to $30. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of money if we think about it from an expense standpoint. But if we think about how much money it costs to develop a heifer, then how much would that $30 be saving you in the long run? And then if we're getting a premium on steer calves or feeder cattle that we're selling, sometimes that covers the cost of the test. But yeah, so it exists on the commercial side. My lab group's actually working on validating how well those tests work. So the one thing that I will tell you is that there are some designed for crossbred cattle. There's some designed for purebred Angus or straightbred Angus, commercial Angus cattle. And so make sure that whatever you're doing matches your operation. But they exist, and we're working on validating how well they work, because we know, and inherently I do tell people this, they're never as accurate as the genomically enhanced EPDs, right? Because how well you do on the test depends on how much you know and how well you study, right? And we know with those genomically enhanced EPDs from the Breed Association, there's a lot more information and work.
Hundreds, not thousands.
Lots of data as compared to just a single piece of DNA. But don't let that discourage you, because they still work, and they're better than just looking at them, right? So they're better than nothing. And so that's kind of an up and coming technology in the industry that we're starting to see. And my group and the University of Missouri are doing our best to kind of look at how well they work, so we can come up with like some recommendations of best case use for those types of products.
And the great thing, this works on a small producer or a large producer, whatever your objectives. What if I just want to improve my herd? I want to do it as quick as possible. Could I just embryo transfer?
Yeah. So I think embryos are a lot of economic cost up front. But from a seed stock standpoint, you see that a lot. You see a lot of people who take genetically superior females and they flush them, and they pick different genetically superior bulls, and they breed those together, and then they implant those into commercial cattle or, seed stock cattle of less genetic merit to increase that genetic gain. And I mean, it's something to consider. It's something that works. But for the day-to-day commercial producer, I don't know if those numbers would pencil out.
But if I have a small herd, I want to make it better quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And could that be sex semen that they use?
Yep.
It costs more though, isn't it?
Yep. Well, I mean, and I think sex semen, $5 to $10 more a straw. Okay. I mean, it's nothing astronomical. And I know here at the University of Missouri, we're looking at ways to increase, because conception rates are lower when you use sex semen. But I think they've got, I've seen, success rates of 65% with sex semen out of our groups here. So I think we're improving every day.
Right.
For me, I think the best way from a commercial standpoint is, like I said, splitting that herd in half, using the sexed heifer semen on the best maternal cows, getting the best possible replacement heifers as possible, and turning that genetic crank on the maternal side, and then bringing in those terminal bulls.
This has been fantastic. This is not your father's, grandfather's way to build a herd anymore, is it?
No, it's not. Like everything, technology progresses. We get better by the day. And 15, 20 years ago, the iPhone was something that, we didn't know anything about. And so I like to use the cell phone analogy a lot when it comes to technology, because we've come a long way, and that's the same thing we're doing with beef cattle production.
Wow. All right. And people can contact you anytime?
Absolutely.
So...
Yeah, my email is jcourter@missouri.edu. COURTER.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jamie. And this is it for Tim's Take. And stay tuned, and we'll have more coming up. We'll see you. Bye.